Putting together a list of the best sport bikes ever made is no easy feat. By their nature, sport bikes are about pushing the boundaries and stepping out of comfort zones, and every rider has different limits. What works for one rider won't work for another, and that's what makes sport bikes so great. The following is our version of the best classic motorcycle. (1969) Honda CB750. To tell the story of the best sport bikes ever made, we have to go back to their origin, the 1969 Honda CB750. Though it's not a sport bike by modern definition, the CB750 was the world's first superbike, and without it, we would not be where we are today, and we certainly wouldn't have enjoyed the birth of the race-replica sportbike era in the 80s. The Honda CB750 was groundbreaking when it first rolled onto the scene in 1960. Using a 736cc four-cylinder engine that produced 68 horsepower and 44 pound-feet of torque, the CB750 was able to accelerate to top speeds of up to 125 miles per hour. It ushered in a new breed of sports performance motorcycles that put British and European models to shame. 1986 Suzuki GSX-R 750. The 70s saw standard motorcycles slowly evolve into fared sports machines, but real race replicas didn't really arrive until the 80s. Suzuki had a number of models worthy of this list from that era, including the not-for-USA RG500 Gamma. But there's one motorcycle that must be mentioned, the 1986 GSX-R 750. While it wasn't the first GSX-R, since Japan had its Japan-only GSX-R 400 since 1984, the GSX-R 750 was the first GSX-R model available in the US. If the Honda CB750 was the first superbike, then the GSX-R 750 was the world's first authentic crotch rocket. (1988) Honda VFR 750 RRC30. If the Suzuki GSX-R 750 brought sports performance to the masses, the Honda VFR 750 RRC30 brought it to the elite. Only 3,000 RC30s were made, with each one costing $15,000. That seems like a relatively cheap price, but that was a lot back then. The RC30 commanded that kind of price tag for good reason. They featured top-tier parts and were hand-built by HRC's race technicians. The RC30's engine was a 748cc V4 unit with sophisticated components. These included titanium connecting rods, gear-driven camshafts, race-inspired gearing, and an unorthodox firing order. The result was a broad spread of power that could be delivered when and where it was needed. In unrestricted form, the RC30 had 118 horsepower, 51 pound-feet of torque, and the ability to hit speeds north of 150 miles per hour. (1992) Aprilia 125 rupees. The best sport bikes aren't always the biggest or the ones with the most power. Throughout the 90s there was one motorcycle that was the stuff of dreams for young riders, the Aprilia 125 rupees. While its fame wasn't as big in the US, the Aprilia RS had a big following in Europe. It was a small-capacity two-stroke motorcycle with fairly impressive stats. Needless to say, it was the bike that launched 1,000 racing careers. Unlike a lot of little race replicas, the 125 rupees performed as good as it looked. In unadulterated and restricted form, the Aprilia RS boasted 15 horsepower, but any teenager with a wrench and a bit of know-how could quickly unlock the engine's full 34 horsepower and 18.4 pound-feet torque potential. (1994) Ducati 916. The Ducati 916 was one of the most iconic motorcycles of the 1990s, featuring striking bodywork, a powerful engine, and race-proven handling. The 916 is one of the best sport bikes ever made and easily one of the best motorcycles ever producing by Ducati. The 916 is powered by a 916cc 90-degree desmodromic V-twin engine, designed by Massimo Tamburini. Tamburini is often described as one of the greatest motorcycle designers of all time, and while the 916 is just one of his many celebrated creations, it's arguably one of the best. The V-twin engine produced an impressive 114 horsepower, 67 pound-feet of torque and could propel the 916 to speeds of up to 160 miles per hour. (1998) Yamaha YZF-R1. You don't have to be a Yamaha rider to appreciate the value of the very first R1. It was a motorcycle that significantly raised the bar and revolutionized what a leader-class sport bike could, or rather should be. First launched in 1998, the Yamaha YZF-R1 redefined the class. The first generation of R1 models was the full package. It was the most powerful motorcycle in its class and also the lightest motorcycle in its class too. Measuring up against the competition, the R1 was easily the smallest too, and it was even smaller than many 600s. Armed with Yamaha's Genesis engine, a carbureted 998cc liquid-cooled, 20-valve, DOHC, inline 4-cylinder unit and hit speeds of up to 168 miles per hour. (2004) Kawasaki Ninja ZX10R. The ZX9R was great, but it couldn't move with the times. To bring the Ninja back in the game, Kawasaki unleashed the ZX10R onto the world in 2004. You could have a list of Ninjas representing the greatest sport bikes ever made, but we've tried to limit our choices to really notable models, and the ZX10R is arguably the most significant of them all. Lighter and more powerful than the above-mentioned R1, the new Ninja surpassed all competition. It used a 998cc liquid-cooled inline 4-cylinder engine that hammered out 155 horsepower at the wheel. (2010) BMW S1000RR. Technically the first BMW S1000RR arrived in 2009, when BMW released 1,000 units as homologation specials. The model was such a success that BMW decided to transform it into a commercially viable production bike from 2010 onward. The S1000RR would become BMW's first modern sport bike, and it would leave a lasting impression that resonates right up to the present day. At first glance, the original S1000RR didn't look particularly special. It used a list of fairly standard ingredients: a 998cc inline 4 engine, ABS as standard, Brembo brakes, Bosch electronics and plush suspension, wrapped in an aerodynamic package. But BMW managed to use those ingredients and make something better. (2017) Ducati 1299 Panigale Superleggera. Any Panigale could go on this list, but there's something about the 1299 Superleggera that's just so majestic. The Superleggera was the top-tier 1299 model, and when it first appeared in 2016, everyone paid attention. Limited to 500 units, the Superleggera took the stock Panigale 1299 and turned it up to 11. It was even lighter than the previous 1199 Superleggera, which made it a superlight sport bike with a formidable power-to-weight ratio. The 1285cc Superquadro V-twin engine was the most powerful factory twin ever produced, boasting 215 horsepower and 108 pound-feet of torque. (2015) Kawasaki Ninja H2. In 2015, the Kawasaki Ninja H2 rolled into our lives. This all-new supercharged hypersports motorcycle was something of a shot in the arm for the motorcycle industry. Unlike the fearsome and outrageous H2R, the H2 was designed from the streets rather than select closed circuits. It may not have a power output over 300 horsepower, but it does exceed 200, which is more than enough for anyone. Powered by a supercharged 998cc inline-4 engine, the H2 is the first production supercharged machine of its kind. Rather than relying on third-party technology, Kawasaki's supercharger was made specifically for the H2 engine. The result is air pressure in the airbox that's 2.4x atmospheric pressure, which allows for some explosive performance.